Welcome to the Fact Hunter channel. In today's episode, we'll talk about the FBI's undercover operation and the German bases in South America established as early as the 1930s. In early 1940, war clouds from Europe began to reach the United States. President Franklin D. Roosevelt and his administration's staff then realized that Nazi agents had established a network of bases stretching from Mexico across South America. Secret radio stations relayed military, political, and economic reports received from German spies operating in the United States to Abwehr headquarters in Hamburg, Cologne, and Brussels. Before Hitler came to power in 1933, large numbers of Germans emigrated to South America and settled in the compact colonies. By the end of the 1930s, Brazil, Argentina, and Chile were home to some 6,000 native-born Germans or their overseas-born descendants. When Hitler began to remilitarize Germany, the Nazi movement was received with great enthusiasm in the three countries. Germans and their descendants wore the brown uniforms of the shock troops and flew Nazi flags on ceremonial occasions. Organizations of German war veterans, the Young Germans movement, and the German Labor Front were formed. In early June 1940, President Roosevelt called an emergency conference to discuss the problem of the growing danger beyond the southern border. Present were J. Edgar Hoover, head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, and the heads of Army and Navy intelligence. Everything. After a lengthy discussion, it was decided to establish a Special Intelligence Service, SIS, to conduct operations overseas and gather information on activities that threaten the security of the United States. The creation of the new organization was greeted with enthusiasm by Roosevelt, primarily because the United States was the only major country in the world that did not have its own intelligence agency. It was not until a year later that the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, was established. The President issued a directive defining the tasks of foreign intelligence. FBI Director Hoover and his agents were given oversight of civilian intelligence in the Western Hemisphere. Acting with typical haste, Hoover organized the SIS operation in less than a month, and his agents infiltrated several countries in South America. These people traveled under assumed names and worked as secret intelligence officers. Later, other agents were assigned to U.S. embassies and given false titles to mask their real activities. The planning and organizing of operations and the flipping of agents was done in strict secrecy. This carefully thought-out program was designed to eliminate the Nazi spy threat in South America. And FBI agents often risked their lives during the operation. It was also an extremely sensitive operation that could only succeed with close cooperation with friendly governments in South America. Results had to be achieved without drawing public attention or violating the official neutrality of the United States or any of the countries involved. One undercover agent went to South America as a representative of an American soap company, and his superiors never found out what his role was in the FBI. Within a few months, the agent sold so much soap that the company had to expand its distribution network. At the same time, the talented salesman made contacts in industrial and governmental spheres. These personal connections provided the agent with invaluable information on Nazi activities. Another FBI agent with a youthful appearance came to one of Argentina's cities as a reporter. He soon began sending articles to American newspapers and attracted the attention of companies wishing to do business in South America. He appeared under the pseudonym William Byers. He spent much of his time near a small hotel managed by a 30-something man. His parents lived in a European country under German occupation. The hotel manager rejected Byers' suggestion that he should become an American spy. He headed a civic association whose members worked in all sorts of businesses, utilities, and government agencies in the city, which is why, Byers felt, he would be a valuable asset to the FBI. The agent adopted a new tactic to get the manager to cooperate. "I would like to write a series of articles on various groups in the city," he declared, "and I need your help in gathering information." Byers looked carefully at the man, watching his reaction. The manager stared at the young American for more than a minute. Probably all this time he suspected that Byers was in fact a confidant of the brutal Argentine secret police. Then the man declared solemnly, "If I give you this information, will it reach the right people?" At this point, Byers realized that the manager wanted to give the information to the United States, but did not trust the agent. "They will certainly reach the right people," replied Byers. Most South American governments were eager to assist in the FBI's counterintelligence project. Their leaders were deeply concerned about signs of overt support for the Nazis, and rumors that Adolf Hitler intended to conquer these countries and make them German colonies. That several countries, especially Argentina, maintained a hostile attitude, and police and government officials obstructed the FBI's covert activities by all means. In Argentina, it was not uncommon for agents to be followed, and their local informants, arrested by the police, told of the horrific torture inflicted on them. In the port of Buenos Aires, the FBI kept an old motorboat well hidden in a fenced-in harbor. One night, a local informant, pursued by the police, eluded his pursuers and made his way to the speedboat, whose captain was Argentinian. The fugitive climbed quietly aboard Crandall's navy. The FBI named the boat after the agent who devised and put into action the escape plan. A few moments later, the speedboat left the marina and headed for the harbor. On the way to the open sea, the captain had to flee from harbor police patrols several times. Eventually, Crandall's navy arrived safely in Montevideo, Uruguay. Meanwhile, William Byers, an FBI agent claiming to be a journalist, came to the attention of the police. He was followed at least once a week. On those days, he was particularly zealous in his role as a reporter and avoided all contact with local informants. Like many independent and adventurous people, Byers had a spirit of contrariness and couldn't help but taunt the police trying to catch him in espionage activities. Playing the role of a journalist, he visited the head of the city's detectives, the man who directed his surveillance. "I just happened to be passing by and thought to myself, would you stop by for coffee with me?" he said. "I had to drive this guy crazy," recounted Byers later to a colleague. "The detectives who followed me did too. They had no idea that a high-ranking friend at police headquarters was informing my hotel manager what days I would be followed." On one occasion, Byers' informants told him that 2 Germans, suspected of espionage activities, had arrived in a nearby town by car. The agent set out to determine who they were, where they went when they reached their destination, and who they were in contact with. This was a difficult task. Neither he nor his informants even knew the names of the 2 Germans. Byers simply went to a friendly hotel manager who told him to come back the next day. When he returned the next day, he heard the same thing. The American felt that the manager was either selling him out or that getting information about the 2 Germans was akin to looking for the proverbial needle in a haystack. On the 3rd day, the manager handed Byers a typewritten piece of paper that contained the names of the 2 Germans, the car's license plate number, and even the engine's serial number. The report further stated that the suspects left and finished their conversation on the way to a neighboring town. It was the most detailed report involving espionage ever received by the FBI. As it turned out, Byers was wrong on one crucial point. There were 3 Germans in the car, not 2. Amazed by the accuracy of the account, Byers asked his friend, "How did you get all this information?" "The 3rd German who drove the car was my man," replied the hotel manager in an indifferent tone. The information provided by the manager led to the unmasking of a German espionage network operating in the area with complete indifference from the police. However, newspaper articles that began to appear in Argentina and the United States through Byers' reporter put the network out of business. Brazil, also a breeding ground for Nazi spy activity, broke off diplomatic relations with Germany and Italy in early 1942. With the help of Brazilian authorities, undercover FBI agents tracked down and dismantled 6 clandestine radio stations transmitting coded information to 3 locations in Europe. However, the most dangerous Nazi spy operating in Brazil managed to slip through the net. The FBI did not even learn his name. All that was known was that he headed a spy network that had a hidden radio station using the CIT call sign. The secret spy was Joseph Jacob Johannes Starzinski, a German engineer and scientist, a thin man with thick-rimmed glasses. In the spring of 1941, he arrived in Rio de Janeiro by ship, smuggling through customs a large bag containing a radio transmitter, 4 code books, and a microphotography manual. 5 weeks later, the CIT's clandestine radio station began sending information to Germany. In mid-December 1941, Starzinski traveled to Santos, Brazil, to install a second hidden transmitter and discovered he needed a wave meter. He went to a small store, intending to buy the missing part, but the salesman told him he didn't have it in stock. He could, however, order it and deliver it to the customer if the customer left him a name and address. The stranger wrote on a scrap of paper, "O. Mendez, Hotel Santos, Santos." Brazilian security service agents warned the merchants to exercise caution when selling radio parts to foreigners. So the store owner reported to the police and gave them the address and name of the customer. At Hotel Santos, as it soon turned out, no O. Mendez. A week later, however, a man who introduced himself as O. Mendez telephoned the store about a previously ordered wave meter. The store owner stated that he expected delivery any day and immediately notified the police, who in turn informed the FBI. Relying on the scanty information O. Mendez had given during a recent phone call, the FBI, with the help of the police, gathered all the data. These seemed to point to Niels Christian Christensen, a respected Danish engineer who ran a trading company in Rio de Janeiro. Christensen was arrested and eventually admitted that he was not Danish but German, and that his real name was Joseph Jacob Johannes Starzency. His home and bank safe provided all too much evidence of his espionage activities. Ciphers, copies of reports, secret instructions, and the names of agents and informants. It was only years later that the FBI broke its silence on its brilliant successes in combating widespread Nazi espionage activity in South America. During the war, 887 German spies were identified. 389 of them were arrested by local authorities, and 105 were convicted. 24 clandestine radio stations were detected, and 30 radio transmitters were confiscated by local authorities after being located by the FBI. The operation was not without casualties. 4 FBI officers, including Deputy Director Percy J. Foxworth, were killed while carrying out their mission, all in plane crashes.